She never spoke a word about what she did. No videos, no social posts, no proof. Just a snowy trail in Montana, a trembling kitten with a stubby tail, and a woman who couldn't look away. But years later, a single photo shattered the silence. Now, millions are asking, did she raise a wild bobcat and let it go? And why does the internet call its echo a roar? You think you know what this is? You don't. Let me tell you the real story before someone else twists it. White silence and the cry no one heard. Sometimes the quiet doesn't comfort you. It warns you. Stillwater Valley looked like a snow globe that morning, sealed in silence, frozen in time. Trees stood brittle and bare, every pine needle trimmed with frost. The wind had died sometime in the night, leaving behind a kind of hush that presses against your skin, as if nature itself is holding its breath. Evelyn Carter zipped her parka to the top and stepped off the porch of her cabin, boots crunching on untouched snow. The morning air bit through her gloves, but she welcomed the sting. It grounded her. She had lived alone here in rural Montana for 6 years now, ever since grief hollowed her out and the city became unbearable. A freelance wildlife photographer by trade, Evelyn had retreated to this place to find something quieter than sorrow. She found it in the woods, in the rhythm of elk migration, in watching snowshoe hares vanish between the shadows. Every few days, she hiked out to check her trail cameras, swapping memory cards, tracking patterns, catching glimpses of things that lived where no one looked. This morning felt like any other, until it didn't. Half a mile in, she stopped near a fallen log, one that she knew had collapsed months ago. Something felt wrong. The log had fresh tracks leading to it, tiny prints, too small for coyote, too erratic for a rabbit. Then came the sound. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't even a meow. Just the faintest cry, more breath than voice. Evelyn crouched low, peered into the frost-shadowed hollow beneath the log, and saw a movement. A tremble, then a pair of eyes. And just like that, the silence wasn't empty anymore. The creature was small, barely the size of a football. Its fur, silver gray with faint dark spots, clung to its bones, damp and clotted with snow. Its ears, tufted, alert, flicked at her presence, but it didn't run. Instead, it simply stared. One paw was curled beneath its chest, swollen and raw. The tail was what caught her breath, short, thick, bobbed at the end. This wasn't a domestic kitten. This was a lynx rufus, a bobcat, maybe 8 weeks old, alone, dying. Evelyn knew better. This wasn't her place. Wild animals had mothers. Interfering could doom it further. She'd seen enough cases, human rescue turning into tragedy. But the snow around the log told a crueler story. No returning prints, no warmth nearby, no blood, just cold. The kitten hadn't moved in hours. She sat beside the log, watching. Time passed like breath in the air, visible, vanishing. The bobcat blinked slowly, and Evelyn felt something tug in her ribs. Not pity, not panic. Recognition. She pulled off one glove and reached inside her coat for a small, fleece pouch she kept snacks in. Tearing a piece of protein bar, she held it out. Low, careful, unthreatening. The cub didn't bite. It sniffed, then shuddered, then leaned closer. When its head touched her palm, Evelyn whispered, "Willow." She didn't know why she chose that name. Maybe because the willow tree bends, but never breaks. Maybe because it was soft and silent, and belonged to the wild. She didn't carry Willow home. She carried her decision. And in that moment, deep in a snow-locked forest, Evelyn Carter broke her own silence. Not with words, but with choice. Raising a secret wild heart. Back at the cabin, Evelyn moved quickly. The first thing was warmth. She lit the old wood stove, stacking pine logs until the cast iron growled to life. Then she laid out a box lined with fleece blankets near the hearth. Willow didn't resist, but she didn't relax either. Her body was tight, alert, all instinct and survival. Evelyn crouched by the box, watching as steam began to rise from the cub's damp fur. The injured paw was worse than she'd thought, split between the pads, likely from ice or old barbed wire hidden under snow. She gently cleaned the wound with warm water and iodine, wrapping it in gauze, whispering apologies the whole time. Willow hissed once, but didn't strike, just watched. For feeding, Evelyn mixed goat milk with a tiny pinch of salt and sugar, heating it to body temperature. She used a syringe, dripping it slowly along the side of Willow's mouth. The first time, the cub resisted. The second time, she drank. By the third, her eyes closed while swallowing. Days blurred into one another. Evelyn took no photos. She didn't post to any online forums. She avoided town. Everything she did now circled around Willow's survival. It was like tending a fire during a blizzard. Constant, delicate, quietly desperate. The bond didn't come in a flash. It built itself in inches. In the first time, Willow curled up by the stove without watching Evelyn's every move. In the way her ears stopped twitching when Evelyn walked across the room. In the moment, she fell asleep with her body pressed against the arch of Evelyn's foot, seeking heat and safety. At night, Evelyn lay awake and questioned everything. What if the mother came back and found her cub gone? What if the law found out and came knocking? She told herself this wasn't ownership. This wasn't domestic. This was triage, temporary. But even she knew that wasn't entirely true. Willow wasn't just surviving. She was learning to trust. And trust was a dangerous thing to ask from something that would one day need to walk away. 2 weeks in, Evelyn caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror. Hair tangled, eyes shadowed from sleep deprivation. And she laughed, not with joy, but with disbelief. She had become the keeper of a secret heart, a wild rhythm that pulsed against the quiet she once craved. The cabin no longer felt empty, but it didn't feel safe either. Every day she kept Willow, Evelyn crossed a line she could never uncross. Still, each morning, when the cub rose and stretched, those spotted legs wobbling, that short tail twitching, Evelyn didn't feel regret. She felt chosen, not by fate, by need. Willow grew. The paw healed slowly, but it did heal. Her eyes brightened, muscles filled in, fur thickened into a winter sheen. By the end of the first month, she was walking, climbing, hiding behind furniture, stalking Evelyn's socks with wild precision. But with every new sign of strength came a rising question in Evelyn's mind. What happens when she's strong enough to leave? That answer would come sooner than she expected. By the time Willow turned 5 months old, her body had transformed. She was no longer the shivering bundle Evelyn had pulled from the snow. She moved like breath, smooth, alert, coiled with a tension that wasn't human, wasn't tame. Her shoulders rolled when she walked, muscles rippling beneath her now thick, silvery gray coat. The faded charcoal spots had darkened with age, giving her a sharper edge. Her tail, short and powerful, flicked constantly in thought, in calculation. Willow was beautiful, and she was unpredictable. At first, Evelyn tried to maintain boundaries. She refused to feed Willow by hand anymore. Meals were placed in bowls, no cuddling, no leash, no collar. She added climbing posts, shelves, and logs throughout the cabin, mimicking natural perches. She kept windows open in the day, allowing Willow to watch the birds, smell the air. But instincts can't be boxed in. Willow started leaping to the top of the cabinets. Once, she knocked over a hanging pot rack with a sound so sudden it sent Evelyn to the floor in a panic. The scratches began, unintended mostly. Little swipes when Willow pounced too hard. Claw marks on the door, on Evelyn's hands. Nothing malicious, just the marks of something growing into its nature. But it was the silence that worried Evelyn more than the scratches. There were moments, long, uncomfortable ones, when she'd catch Willow staring at her. Not with affection, not with fear, but with something distant, something assessing, as if Willow couldn't quite place who, or what, Evelyn was to her anymore. Late one night, Evelyn sat by the fire, watching the flickering shadows dance across the wooden floor. Willow lay nearby, stretched across the rug, head resting on her paws. Evelyn whispered, more to herself than to the bobcat, "You're not mine. I know that." Willow's ear twitched, but she didn't move. That winter, Evelyn read everything she could about bobcat behavior. She learned that around 6 months, they begin marking territory, seeking independence. She learned that most never bond with humans beyond early weeks. Too instinct-driven, too solitary. She watched documentaries, studied release protocols, reviewed legal consequences. The line she walked was thinner than ever. Yet even with all that knowledge, Evelyn couldn't bring herself to regret what she'd done. Willow hadn't just healed physically. She had taught Evelyn how to live with presence, with risk, with a love that asked for nothing and gave everything in moments. Still, Evelyn knew something had to change. This wasn't sustainable. Every day Willow stayed, the danger grew. Not just to Evelyn, but to the bobcat herself. Habituation to humans could get her killed if she ever crossed paths with the wrong person. Worse, if the authorities found out, Willow might be seized and euthanized. The thought hollowed Evelyn. But loving something wild means accepting what it needs more than you, and what Willow needed wasn't a fireplace or a fleece blanket. It was space, cold, brutal, endless space. So Evelyn began to withdraw, gently. She fed Willow without speaking, stopped petting her, sat farther away. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation, for both of them. Some nights, she cried into her pillow, silent so Willow wouldn't come close and confuse the tears for weakness. Because this wasn't weakness. This was the kind of strength no one sees, the kind that opens the door and doesn't follow. A choice with claws. It takes only one moment to remind you that trust isn't the same as safety. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, late February. The snow outside was thick and wet, clinging to the window panes like melted wax. Evelyn was slicing frozen meat into chunks, preparing Willow's meal. It was part of the new routine, minimal interaction, structured feeding, no direct hand contact. She moved quietly, focused, her mind numb with the cold repetition of letting go. Then she opened the freezer, and the room shifted. A sharp hiss exploded behind her. Spinning around, Evelyn saw Willow crouched low near the table, pupils blown wide, ears pinned flat. The sound came from deep in her throat, primal and foreign. She didn't charge, but her body was taut with warning. Her front paw flexed, claws unsheathed. Evelyn froze. She didn't move toward her, didn't speak, just lowered the bag of meat slowly to the ground and backed away with hands raised slightly. Not in fear, but in recognition. Willow wasn't attacking out of rage. She was reacting out of instinct, triggered by the metallic scent, the sudden cold air, or maybe just the surprise of it all. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then Willow blinked, gave one slow step backward and turned her head. Just like that, it was over. But something had cracked. That night, Evelyn sat at the foot of her bed, replaying the moment in her mind, not with terror, but with clarity. She had crossed into new territory. Willow was no longer a vulnerable cub. She was a predator, a precise, thinking, solitary creature, wired by thousands of years to live without her. That realization didn't frighten Evelyn. It grounded her. She remembered her father's words, spoken years ago during one of their last long hikes through Glacier National Park. He'd been a ranger, a man of few sentences and quiet truths. "You don't own a wild thing," he'd said, running a hand along an old pine tree. "You hold its trust until it leaves you." Evelyn had never really understood what he meant until now. The next morning, she opened her old notebook and began to write, not in a journal, but in a series of unsent letters. One to the local wildlife rescue center, one to the fish and game department, one to Willow. The words came slowly. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't seek permission. She only told the truth. Willow was never hers. And if Evelyn wanted to honor what they had, she had to help her become what she was always meant to be. Wild, alone, free. The decision was made in silence, like most of Evelyn's turning points. There was no dramatic moment, no dramatic goodbye, only snow falling outside and a blueprint unfolding in her mind. Willow was ready. Maybe not in days, maybe not entirely, but soon. And Evelyn had to make sure the world beyond the cabin didn't destroy her the minute she stepped back into it. She started with the land. Behind her cabin stretched a thin sliver of forest, dense, untouched, and leading into state-protected territory. Evelyn cleared a spot near the edge and began constructing a transitional enclosure. It wasn't a cage, she couldn't bear that. Instead, it was a large pen made from repurposed fencing, half covered in pine boughs and brush, outfitted with logs to climb, rocks to hide beneath, and a tiny lean-to with straw for shelter. It looked crude, but it was enough to teach Willow to sleep outdoors again, to recognize the sense of her birthright. She called it the halfway place. Each day, Evelyn moved Willow's food bowls closer to the door. At first, Willow hesitated. She would eat, then dart back into the cabin. But within a week, she began lingering near the open threshold, watching the trees. Another week, and she stopped sleeping by the stove. Her claws sharpened against bark, not floorboards. Her eyes shifted again. Not wild exactly, but distant, like she was listening to something Evelyn couldn't hear. Evelyn stayed in the background. She no longer called Willow's name. She didn't pet her. She watched. She waited. And every time Willow ignored her, every time she vanished into the trees a little longer than before, Evelyn forced herself to be proud. The last night Willow slept inside was the coldest of the season. Evelyn found her curled by the hearth, just like that first night months ago. She knelt nearby, folded herself down beside the growing weight of the animal she'd saved. Willow stirred, lifted her head for a moment, then rested it against Evelyn's shoulder. No sound, no fear, just warmth. Evelyn didn't speak. She just breathed her in, the wild scent, the clean musk of pine and fir. She closed her eyes and whispered into the quiet, "Don't forget I loved you without a leash." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a goodbye. It was a truth. And truths, Evelyn had learned, are stronger than farewells. The thaw came late that year. March crept in with its usual mix of deception. Bright skies and bitter winds. The smell of melt without the warmth to match. Evelyn watched the slope behind the cabin for signs, softened drifts, wet paw prints that held their shape, birdsong returning in hesitant notes. Willow, now nearly 10 months old, had outgrown every shadow of her former self. Her coat had thickened into a winter armor of gray and ash, her shoulders broader, her stare more piercing. She barely acknowledged Evelyn anymore, and Evelyn took that as a victory. On the morning she chose, Evelyn didn't say a word. She simply opened the door to the halfway enclosure, walked to the far end, and unlatched the final gate leading into the forest. Then she returned to the cabin and waited. The first hour passed in silence. The second stretched longer. Then, near dusk, Evelyn saw her, Willow, standing at the open gate, her head low, ears high, sniffing the breeze as if catching a memory from long ago. For a full minute, she remained frozen, eyes locked not on Evelyn, but on something beyond. Then she stepped forward, one paw, another. And then she was gone, disappearing into the white-shadowed woods without a sound, without a glance. Evelyn didn't chase, didn't call out. Her hands remained at her sides. The ache in her chest wasn't sharp, it was clean, like the cut of truth. She hadn't released Willow that day. She had only opened the space for Willow to choose. The cabin felt impossibly still that night. No rustle from the rug, no click of claws on wood. Evelyn sat by the fire, not to warm herself, but to remember the weight that used to curl beside her. She poured herself tea, untouched, and stared at the empty hearth. Over the next weeks, she found paw prints near the ridge behind the house, sometimes fresh, sometimes fading. She never followed them. She didn't want confirmation. What she wanted was possibility, that Willow might still roam these woods, wild and whole. Spring came. Then summer. Evelyn began photographing again. Her work changed, less posed, more patient. She submitted a series of wildlife images anonymously to Wild North magazine, including a single photo of a bobcat perched on a ridge at dawn. No caption, no location, just light, muscle, and silence. It was never about the internet. It was about the wild things she had carried without asking, nurtured without naming, loved without owning, and then let go. The image that roared. You can keep a secret with the forest, but never with the internet. It started with one photo. Evelyn had sent it months ago to Wild North magazine, a quiet nature publication known for spotlighting independent wildlife photographers. The picture showed a bobcat silhouetted against a ridge, its short tail flicked mid-motion, golden morning light streaking across its fur. The editor, captivated by its quiet power, requested to feature it in their spring issue. Evelyn, as always, declined to be named. She didn't think about it again until her inbox exploded. The magazine had published the photo on its social media feed, with a caption Evelyn hadn't approved. Just 2 sentences, added by the editor without malice or intention to stir controversy. Photographer reports raising this bobcat orphan in isolation before releasing it back to the wild. A story of silent rescue. That was all it took. The photo was reposted across wildlife forums, photography groups, animal advocacy pages. And then it spread like a spark through dry grass, TikTok edits, reaction videos, emotional commentary. People across the internet clung to the idea of a lone woman, a wild creature, and a love too quiet to claim attention. Until now. Hashtags emerged. # Willow. The bobcat. # emotional rescue. # raised in silence. The internet filled the blanks Evelyn had deliberately left open. Some believed she was a biologist. Others assumed it was fake. A few insisted the story had to be illegal and called for investigation. But most were moved. Evelyn watched it unfold from her cabin stunned. She hadn't even told anyone the bobcat's name. And now, strangers across the world were calling out to Willow like they'd known her forever. A wildlife rescue group reached out, asking if she would speak at an upcoming panel. A national talk show producer requested an interview. A children's book author proposed a collaboration. Evelyn didn't answer. It felt wrong to make something sacred into something sold. But the story was no longer just hers. The world had taken hold of it, twisting, sharing, romanticizing. And yet, beneath the noise, something rang true. People weren't connecting because it was dramatic. They were connecting because it was honest. Because deep down, we all wonder, if we loved something wild enough, would it love us back? And that wonder had become a roar. A local journalist was the first to find her. His name was Cole Ramirez, a soft-spoken man from Billings who had covered everything from forest fires to local art shows. He showed up at Evelyn's cabin unannounced, notebook in hand, boots soaked in snowmelt. She nearly didn't open the door. But something in his tone, low, unhurried, felt different from the noise online. He didn't ask for a dramatic headline. He just asked to listen. They spoke by the fire. Evelyn told the truth, start to finish. No embellishments, no heroics. She described the day she found Willow, the nights filled with silent trust, The hard decision to build a world her hands would never belong to. She showed him the letters she'd written, but never sent. One to Willow, one to herself. Cole didn't publish all of it. He kept the details respectful, the location vague. But his article titled, "Raised in Silence, The Woman Who Let the Wild Go Free," went deeper than any trending post. It spoke not just of the bobcat, but of what it costs to love and not keep. The reaction was immediate and layered. Animal welfare groups praised her emotional restraint and ethical instincts. Conservationists pointed to the story as a lesson in soft rewilding. Some skeptics questioned the legality, wondering why she hadn't contacted authorities sooner. Evelyn didn't argue. She had no perfect defense, only context. But in the flood of responses, what moved her most were the quiet stories people began to share. A retired ranger who once helped a wounded fox recover. A woman who'd watched over a hawk for weeks after its wing healed, only to cry when it never returned. A teenager who buried a dying squirrel and thanked her for giving his grief a name. They weren't telling stories about animals. They were telling stories about themselves, about connection, compassion, and letting go. Evelyn began to understand. This wasn't about a bobcat. It never had been. It was about the human need to feel close to something untamed, and the courage it takes to let it remain so. When asked if she had any final words for the article, she said only this: "Not every rescue ends in keeping. The truest love is sometimes letting go." What wild love leaves behind. When you free something wild, you never know what it might return as. Evelyn hadn't expected it to go further than the article. She figured, like most viral moments, the story would fade. But something about Willow's journey lingered, not as a trending topic, but as a symbol. Teachers began using the story in classrooms, blending lessons in biology with empathy. Science educators printed the photo of Willow on posters, underlining the line from the article that struck everyone: "The truest love is sometimes letting go." College psychology classes explored Evelyn's story through the lens of cross-species attachment. Animal behaviorists referred to it during debates about rewilding and human-animal bonding. Her photo was analyzed, not for its lighting or composition, but for the emotion it carried. That invisible thread between two creatures, captured mid-step on a Montana ridge. She was invited to speak at events, wildlife panels, even virtual conferences. Evelyn declined most of them. She wasn't interested in becoming a spokesperson. But she did accept one invitation, an online gathering for rescue volunteers and wildlife rehabbers, not to speak, just to listen. There, she realized how many people lived with the same ache. Those who had helped, nurtured, and released animals, sometimes without ever knowing if they survived. Their stories echoed with quiet bravery, with heartbreak, with unshakable respect. Inspired, Evelyn began curating these stories. She built a simple website, Wild in Silence, where people could submit anonymous letters, memories, and photos about wild animals they'd once helped and had to release. There were no sponsors, no ads, no credit. Just a quiet digital forest of emotional footprints left behind. And the submissions poured in. A man who rescued an orphaned raccoon during a flood. A child who sat by a fox's body for hours, just to make sure it wasn't alone. A woman who saw her owl return one last time, then never again. Evelyn read every story, sometimes late into the night, the fire low, her fingers resting on Willow's old feeding bowl like a memory still warm. The world didn't need another viral photo. It needed a place to remember that love doesn't always end in ownership. Sometimes it ends in legacy. 2 winters had passed since Willow disappeared into the woods, and Stillwater Valley had gone quiet again. The seasons cycled as they always did. Snow draped the evergreens in heavy silence, and Evelyn found comfort in its predictability. Life had slowed. Not empty, but still. She kept her routines. Firewood in the morning, tea in the evening, camera slung over her shoulder when she walked the ridge. Her work found a new rhythm. Fewer photos of wildlife, more of spaces where something had just been. A trail in the frost. A hollow log disturbed. A shadow moving just out of frame. Then, one dusk in early December, she saw it. She had stepped out to toss compost into the trees when her breath caught. 50 feet away, near the edge of the pine line, a bobcat stood still as stone. Its silhouette was unmistakable. Compact, powerful, tail bobbed short. The light from the setting sun kissed its fur with silver. It didn't move. Neither did Evelyn. The seconds stretched. Wind whispered. Snowflakes drifted between them like the last page of a letter. The bobcat's eyes found hers. No recognition, no fear, just presence. Then it turned. In one fluid motion, it vanished into the dusk without a sound. She didn't chase it. She didn't speak. Back inside, Evelyn sat by the fire, hands folded, heart pounding with a strange kind of joy. One that didn't ask for answers. Was it Willow? Had she returned to her origin, even if only for a heartbeat? She would never know, and that was okay. Because love, the kind that honors freedom, doesn't need reunion. It lives in the possibility, in the tracks outside your door, in the pause before vanishing, in the knowing that somewhere, something you gave away is still alive and still wild. And that was the most Evelyn could ever hope for. There are stories we tell to be heard, and others we carry because no one else can. This was never about taming a wild animal. It was about listening when no one else could hear the cry. About sitting in silence with something fierce and fragile, and choosing to care anyway. Evelyn didn't save Willow to be seen. She did it because something inside her answered a call, older than words. If you've ever looked into an animal's eyes and felt something shift in your chest, if you've ever let go of something you loved because it needed more than you could give, then this story was for you. At Paw Prints and Stories, we honor connections that don't fit into headlines, quiet rescues, emotional instincts, love that doesn't come with a leash. And if you've ever carried one of those moments in your life, share it. Your voice might be the one someone else has been waiting for. Because sometimes, the stories that change us most are the ones no one ever planned to tell.